However, there's a law which Gilbert talks about, and that's an interesting one, which says the biggest problem at work is that no one tells you what to do. Interesting. We have seen many reasons, many project managers, many program managers, and many various departments which are built around telling people what to do, but never in the most exact terms. I have an example. Uh, for example, flexible hours or flexi time is where people can choose uh, when they are starting and when they are finishing, as long as they complete their required daily hours. While this seems like boon for work-life balance, it can sometimes lead to confusion, meeting schedules, and even collaboration requirements. More often than not, there are people required to come at the same time and leave at different times. There's a misalignment, there's miscommunication, and also a drop of productivity. Uh, it's no clear instructions which we have seen and are given regarding team collaboration, availability of meetings, or even expected responsiveness. Employees sometimes even feel lost of having their performances get hindered. So yes, I think that's something we might want to avoid when talking about, you know, having Gilbert's law in play there. Anyone has any other examples which they might want to share about how Gilbert's law manifests? And Amaya, I can see you raising hands. So
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Um, so especially product management, where we deal with a lot of ambiguity, right? The most common thing which I've seen misunderstood is empathy. And nobody tells you how to be empathetic. It's kind of assumed that because you're a human and maybe you would identify with the same paradigm that your users are in, you would be empathetic to your users. But I don't really think people truly understand that word. I'll give you an example. I did a Gemba walk in a manufacturing plant today, and I completed 14,000 steps, which is a usual. It's a very usual for somebody who works in an assembly line or in a manufacture plant on an everyday basis. So when he does that, and towards the end of the day, you expect him to sit on a software, I think everybody should try that. Every product manager should walk 14,000 steps and then use the software and then see how you truly empathetic you are towards those users. Because I think so. What is happening is when it comes to Gilbert's law, right, where they don't tell you how to be empathetic, they probably just tell you go and talk to the users, ask them questions as possible, ask open-ended questions. But you don't really wear the shoes just by asking questions and seeking answers for them. You actually have to, if possible, live that particular life. Like, for example, when I was working for Atlantis Casino, I did gamble, and I would try to figure out as to how they did reconciliation at the end of the day, and that's how we wrote algorithms to kind of consolidate and expedite their process so that I can release money the next day for the new night. So things like that, and I was a developer then, and then eventually product management saw me through. So that's been my experience with Gilbert's.
So I think there are both sides to this law. There are times where I think it's useful to have sometimes things documented and have things clear. It could be about expectations from a role, or it could be about a team working together. What does the team really expect from each other, or what the roles really entail? And I think it's useful at that point in time that if you are having expectations, or if, for example, how I think you gave example of an industrial floor walk that you just did. A lot of times in those industrial floor walks or how manufacturing companies work, there is a lot of attempt that's made to make information explicit.
Right.
And where when we are working, it's quite ironic that we rely to a lot of things which are implicit in our minds. But when we make an attempt and try to make things explicit, we see that we thought that we were aligned, but when we make those things explicit, we realize that we are actually not aligned. And making information explicit helps us to build that alignment and have a clear understanding how the work is going to move across the board or what we expect from each other. Just a typical Kanban board as well. If you're following any of the Scrum boards, Kanban boards, there's always an expectation, or it could be that a team may have, this is how the work flows in our team. But when you create an opportunity where the team members are coming up and documenting what each of them mean, you realize that not everybody had the same expectation of, say, what something is ready for dev. I had a different expectation of it versus somebody else. So I think Gilbert's law comes into play, and it's very useful to be able to make things explicit. At the same time, I think there are times where you may not need, where you probably don't need to go overboard at it. There is value in having ambiguity in certain areas as well. For example, I would say when it comes to team bonding, when it comes to opportunities for the team members to talk to each other, you're onboarding a new employee, and yes, you need to make that a new onboarding experience easy, special, have things clarified, have things documented, make that a smooth onboarding experience for anybody new who's joining an organization or your team. But if you really go overboard at it and you reduce the element of people coming together and spending time with you, or even in the software development, there's a concept of pairing where there's a driver, there's a navigator, and it's a great opportunity for new team members to kind of spend some time with more experienced people on the project, understand how things are happening, and you kind of learn about things through conversations rather than things being made very explicit in documentation. So I think there are both sides to it, but yes, most often than not, it's useful to make things explicit. And whenever we've done that, whenever I've had an opportunity to do that, I've realized that once you do that, you end up creating better alignment in the teams. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Right. I love that point because that has been known to kill innovation as well. So if you keep spoon feeding people, that reduces their ability to actually be creative and think something else, like think completely out of the box. Yeah.
And even empathy, empathy sometimes it's better formed through engagement, through active engagement, and not sometimes just through a documentation that's been presented to you. And like when you actively engaged and you saw that you walked 14,000 steps in a day, and then you're at 11 o'clock in the night, you're expected to do a podcast, you see what
exactly
those people are kind of going through. So yeah, I think that there is value in that, but you also need to know at what point in time you need to stop and focus on real engagement as well. Yeah.
I think you folks covered, but the point of innovation is pretty relatable, right? When we talk across with the teams, when we work closely with the teams, right? Take it a trivial aspect, which is about story and its details, right? So one thing that is always debatable, and we get into conversations, is how much info is useful, to what extent, and what it should cover, right? And there's no right or wrong there. I think if you are giving all the information explicitly, it kills the innovation. It actually, then we would need robots and not engineers to build it, if you ask me personally, right? So that's why I always take a stand where this should act as a reference, which gives you at least the definition of done, as well as the bare minimum details that helps you to drive the outcome. And rest of the things, I always wish and look forward that it is up to the team to take it forward. So I think we have to maintain a balance being a product manager. Even you do any of those things, from discovery to user discussions to even coming up with the synthesis, right? So I think whenever we radiate the information, it is very important that we keep a balance of how much it should be done and to what extent, right? In any of the things that we come up with.